Welcome to Let's Talk Nation. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm your man, Rod Love, and sitting directly to my left is none other than the General Attorney Greg Jackson.
Once again, it's on. Once again, it's on, brother Love. You know how we get this thing started every week, man. How's your weekend this past week?
Weekend was good, man. I had a little incident with my back again, but this one wasn't my fault.
Uh-oh. No, I ain't hear about the first one.
Well, the first one was my fault.
Okay.
But this one, I'm calling the law firm of Dan Newman. Man, how was your weekend?
Man, my weekend was pretty good, man. Pretty good. I can't even think of what I really did this weekend, so it must mean it was relaxing.
So you laid back then.
But now, let me take a step back. I did, last week was spring break for some college students. So my daughter came in and hung out with us for a little bit for her spring break, which is good that they still want to hang out with the folks.
With the parents.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty much that was it, man. Just got some relaxed time, and then I had to go and do some stuff today down in Palm Beach. I had to go help pick a jury, which is a whole nother story right there. So,
well, we know you're gonna come out victorious. Greg, you mentioned spring break. My baby girl, she's on spring break this week,
right?
But something interesting that I saw, and I saw the article, and I sent my oldest girl a text, and I said, "Push back, baby, push back," and she didn't know what I was talking about. But the article was an article that was talking about nurses, and that you probably saw it too, where it talked about hospitals, and maybe it might be more along the lines of managed care entities. They're moving toward AI nurses, where you're doing this. Is it telemedicine?
Telemedicine.
And so nurses around the country are pushing back, saying, "Oh no, we won't be replaced." Because think about it, you already have telemedicine, and you have real nurses manning the phone.
Yeah.
Think about if you have this level of automation, and you get the phone call, or you're right in front of a webcam or something, and they have the blood pressure thing that you put on, and they do all these things, and it's done through not even a living person. You're gonna lose jobs that way too.
I mean, listen, there's just certain career fields where human beings are integral and should not necessarily be replaced. Now, obviously there's going to be a reduction in the workforce. With certain things like, for instance, people may not recall, but maybe like 20, 30 years ago, you had the RN, the LPN, the candy stripers, and everything else, and now you have more RNs who are taking on the roles and the duties of LPNs because they were able to consolidate what they do. But from the standpoint of automating the human aspect of healthcare, I believe that is a terrible idea.
Terrible idea. But think about this, Greg, too, because you and I, Greg, do you realize we in our eighth year?
Yeah.
Of doing this?
Yeah, man.
But Greg, I remember not too long ago, and Doc Polite was part of this conversation, when we were talking about minimum wage being on the Florida ballot.
Right.
And we talked about what would take place. It was going to take place anyway.
Yeah.
But what would accelerate that process when that minimum wage passed? And we talked about AI, we talked about automation, we talked about robots, and you have seen businesses move quicker because you can save your margins, you can reduce your HR. It's a lot with this, man.
Well, I don't know if businesses are moving quicker. Let me say this, because if you go into a bank right now, banks used to be full of tellers, and you go in, you get in your line, and you move through, you have that human interaction. Now you go into a bank, and there are 2, maybe 3 tellers.
You're right.
And the lines are getting longer. They tell you to go to the ATM, but a lot of times you go to the ATM and it's not able to complete the transaction to the full extent that you need it done. You go into stores now. If you go into a CVS or a Walgreens, it's that kiosk that's there predominantly. But if you have a question, you're standing there you're just standing there looking around and trying to figure out, hey, is there somebody that's going to come and help me through this process? So, to a large extent, I think from a cost-cutting standpoint, automation has done what it's supposed to do. But from the standpoint of maintaining that human contact, I think the automation, that they need to really pull back a little bit on what they're doing with automation to some extent.
And you
That
know, I hear what
was,
you're saying, but boy, margin's gonna play a major role.
Yeah.
that's a terrible idea
What I did, Doc.
for AI to take over nursing. It will never work.
Oh, I
You have
agree
to
with
have
you.
you have to have the human interaction promotes healing and empathic touch. Do you know that babies, if they're not held,
Yeah.
um, will fail to develop?
Yeah.
It needs that skin contact. It needs that human touch is healing. That's part of the healing process. And I don't know if you want Ricky Robot touching your chest, rubbing your head. You
And when you
know,
talk about
Yeah.
home health care too, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you just need a person. You know, and here's the thing. I was having this conversation with a good friend of mine, John Burns, and one of the things that he was saying, and I agree that you know the generation that we have now, you know, they're smart,
hmm
but what the generation that we have now lacks is wisdom, and that wisdom comes from life experience, and they don't have certain experiences that will help them through certain circumstances, and that's the same thing with AI.
Right.
And the problem, so, you know, they have, you know, they've toyed with AI actually, you know, being used in the practice of law. Now, the problem with that, and this recently came up, and I don't know if people saw it, and I'm not, you know, I'm not going to call out any law firms' names because, I
Mhm.
mean, it's, you know, it can happen to the best of us, and obviously it did. But the problem is with AI, when it was asked to, you know, pull up the cases and to draft a motion for this particular case, AI just made up cases.
Wow.
And there were, I want to say there were either 11 or 14, I can't remember the exact number, but let's say, for instance, there were 12 cases that were cited in the motion that was generated on ChatGPT
And it
or
wasn't-
AI, and 11 of the 12 cases cited did not exist.
Wow.
So that's the problem. If AI doesn't have the answer, it's going to create an answer, and that will get you, or can get you into a lot of trouble.
And I noticed what AI is doing, particularly ChatGPT. At the bottom of anything that it generates, it will tell you to double check
Yeah.
your source.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so you know, I mean, you know, AI has, you know, it has its good points. I mean, from a research perspective, I mean, just today I was looking up some things, and we're going to talk about a little bit of it. But I was just looking up some things, and I just asked, you know, ChatGPT, and it pumped out an answer for me. But the thing of it was that I already written down the answer, and so when AI, when it kicked it out, I was like, okay, it's on track with what I
Oh,
was
okay,
thinking anyway.
okay. So you was testing
So
it.
yeah, I mean, I was testing it and seeing if it would give me some additional individuals.
Okay.
You know, which it did, but it was people that I knew that I'd forgotten about.
So great. You know what, man? And here's the part that I think you do a absolute. That's why I want you to eventually get one of those calling a fight announcer type deal. Can you let folk know, man, who they listening to this evening, man?
Listen, right now you are tuned in to two of the most influential voices in Central Florida on a Monday night podcast. Brother Love and Greg Jackson, the dynamic duo, guaranteed to raise your IQs 10 to 15 points. And on some nights, Brother Love, we go up to 25 to 30. And I think tonight just might be one of those nights.
Might be one of those nights.
Yes, sir. So if you want to be a part of the night show, all you got to do is hit 407-921-6195, or you can go to your Facebook and you can message us, and we'll see your message and we'll respond to it. But if you want to be a part of the night show, that's all you got to do to talk to two of the most influential voices in Central Florida, Brother Love and Greg Jackson. Brother Love, let's
Get it on.
Okay.
Hey, boy, I tell you, they all with it tonight,
Yes, sir.
man.
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
Greg, man, I want to jump into this, man. Hey, tell me about Trump voiding Biden's pardons. What's that all about?
Listen, man, I don't know why this is not one of the biggest stories that's taking place right now. But if everyone will recall, as Joe Biden was leaving office, he went through a slew of pardons and things of that nature. And a part of the individuals who were pardoned, to include his son, who was pardoned for crimes they hadn't even committed yet. He took it through all the, you know, but that's another story. He also pardoned Anthony Fauci, who was the doctor who helped push us through and took us into COVID-19, as well as he pardoned members of the January 6th House Committee that investigated the January 6th riots, and basically said that Trump was led to and was a part of that. And so just in like the 11th hour, as he is leaving office, apparently Joe Biden signed pardons to pardon these individuals.
Greg, let me ask. I'm gonna just say maybe a dumb question,
Mm.
but I was not aware, when you said Fauci and the members who, what you say, the members who.
The House
did-
committee who investigated the January 6th riots.
But Greg, did anybody commit a crime? I mean, explain to me the whole pardon process, cause I do know when Nixon, former President Nixon was pardoned, he was pardoned for crimes
That he committed.
that he committed, but wasn't he pardoned for crimes that they weren't aware of, that he could, cause Greg, now they're talking about pardon individuals for crimes that we don't even know about yet.
Right, and listen, that is not the problem. That is not why Trump has indicated that he is voiding out and vacating and holding that the pardons are not effective. The reason why he's doing it, and so yeah, you're right. So what happens is, I think even in the case of his son, he pardoned him beyond the time period that the alleged incidences took place that he was being investigated for. But in this particular case, from some investigation and some organizations, what Trump has determined and what he believes is that the signatures on those pardons are not Joe Biden's signatures.
So Greg, is this
Or-
expression of auto pen?
Auto pen, yeah, or that there were members of his administration that coaxed him to sign these pardons, and he didn't know what it was he was signing because, as we all saw during the debate, during the June debate, which, listen, I don't know why people are still pretending like Joe Biden was not out of it.
Yeah.
We saw Joe Biden, who was an elderly old man who was in a state of decline. We saw Joe Biden that the special counsel refused to prosecute because he said that everyone will feel sorry for this old man who, in essence, was of depreciating capabilities or cognition. And so that, in conjunction with the fact that these pardons were signed with auto pen, led now President Donald Trump to say that he is going to void out the pardons for Anthony Fauci, as well as the January 6th House committee members who he said destroyed a lot of the evidence that was used to find what he did and what the other individuals did in the January 6th riots as being wrong. Now, one of the things that they talked about during the investigation was that Nancy Pelosi, who basically controls the Capitol Police at that time, as the leading House member, that she was responsible for making sure that the House or that the area was secure, and that Donald Trump had requested 10 or 20,000 National Guard troops to come out to maintain the peace, and that Nancy Pelosi did not provide the security that was being requested. And none of that information came out, or if it was discussed with the January 6th committee, they did not take it into consideration, and they held that Donald Trump was solely responsible for what happened on January 6th, where it was really and truly the responsibility of a number of different agencies, and as well as Donald Trump. I'm not going to say everything, but Nancy Pelosi did not do what she should have done as Speaker of the House at that time to secure the hearing.
So Greg, let me ask you this, man, and see, anything law, I'm gonna pivot back. Has this ever been done before in terms of?
I've never heard. That's why I said I cannot believe that this is not one of the biggest stories that's out there right now, that there's a president who is now voiding out the pardons of a former president. This is, in my, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure that someone in Let's Talk Nation will point it out if I am, but I believe that this is the first time that pardons have been voided that a prior president has done. Now, this also could potentially set bad precedent, but just so long as it's being premised upon Joe Biden not actually knowing what he was signing, or that he didn't actually sign it, because I think that in some of them they showed that there was a slight difference in the signatures as well. And so if they are able to show that Joe Biden didn't sign these pardons, then I think that he's absolutely on point. However, if they show that Joe Biden signed these pardons and he intended to sign these pardons as are, that it will set a bad precedent if it is allowed to stand, that a president can now go back and vacate or void out any pardons that are issued by a president as he's leaving office.
Greg, one thing that's caught my eye in particular, man, when we talk about, and Doc and I, the 6 o'clock show, man, we had a conversation about adverse government deterrence. And one of the things that we talked about, bureaucracy. When I look at the Missouri AG,
Yeah.
when he talks about former President Biden, and he talks about staff
Mhm.
actually enforcing some radical policies.
Yeah.
When we talk about bureaucracy, we talk about one of the things that is a detriment, and that is unelected government officials who actually execute and at times, and it's most often than not, at times execute policy of their liking.
Right. Right.
And
right.
so when I saw the Missouri AG call for an investigation into whether or not Biden's cognitive, and you talked about the cognitive decline,
Mhm.
if that contributed to what we saw with policy shaping.
I mean, you know, I don't know if people really and truly. So Joe Biden didn't talk to the press a lot. I mean, that's one thing that even the press members were very critical of,
yeah.
is that Joe Biden was not or did not speak to the press a lot. And there were certain times when Joe Biden would start to say something, it's like, well, I better not say that because I'll get in trouble. And a lot of times when you say that, people started questioning, well, if he's the president of the United States, who's actually controlling or who's actually running, the White House at this time? When the, was it the Secretary of Defense who disappeared for 2 weeks, Lloyd Austin? No one knew where he was because he didn't feel he had to report his whereabouts to anybody. Not even the president knew who he was. People were questioning who's running this administration. And so again, that in conjunction with the fact that we all saw that Joe Biden was a politician in decline, a president in decline, and the fact that he had members of his administration that were doing things and potentially signing things. I mean, remember the people who were in the White House, the parties that they were having in the White House. That's something that I'm sure that an 80-year-old Joe Biden did not think of and did not approve.
And you know what, Greg, let me go ahead and just kind of shape in here just a tad longer when I talk about unofficial government employees that shape policy. Now, don't get it wrong, man. We also understand that once you have elected leaders, they depend and also trust that policy, legislation that they put forth will be done, and here's one of those, I don't know if it's a legal terminology, but it will be done with the spirit and intent that it was created for. So to some degree, you gotta depend on your staff, but also, and this is something else Doc and I spoke about, there has to be a level of accountability.
Absolutely, but I mean, listen, here's the thing. No one, or very few people know everything.
Correct.
And, just because you are elected president of the United States does not mean that you now have this wide breadth of knowledge to where you know every single thing. So you do rely on individuals with certain expertise, to do certain things or to help to move move the needle in certain respects, in certain regards. So it wouldn't be unusual. Think about it. Marco Rubio doesn't have to run to Donald Trump every time he wants to do something.
Correct.
They do have some level of autonomy to do certain things. But if there is a non-elected official that is acting without the full knowledge and understanding of the president, which is what they're saying here, then that's what the issue and the problem is. It's not that, you can rely on members of your cabinet to push forth certain agendas. It's when they start pushing forth their own agenda without making you, as president, fully aware of what's taking place and the effects of that.
And to that end, I guess, Greg, you're absolutely correct, because you wouldn't know the backstory on 1500 pardons that was granted during Biden's administration.
And I'm talking about, it was, in the last 20 days of his administration when all these things came about. He commuted some sentences also of individuals who were on death row, some of which were hard criminals who had murdered police officers and families and different things like that. And people were questioning, what is he doing? I think even members of his own administration, to some extent, were questioning, hey, what is he doing? That's what makes this all very interesting.
So nonetheless, stay tuned, because
Stay tuned.
So great. Stay tuned for that, but also something. There's a lot of things that was taking place over this weekend, man, and one of the things, Columbia University student, rides over the Palestinian student professor. What?
Yeah, so, there's a Columbia student, Mahmoud Khalil, And Mahmoud Khalil, he actually was one of the students. I don't know if you remember when the students took over a building in Columbia, and they had to go in and negotiate with these students to leave the building and things like that.
Mhm,
Well,
mhm.
he was, one of the main negotiators for the students. He has, since graduated from Columbia, and I think that he's still living on campus, and he may be going to graduate school and things of that nature. But he was found to be passing out materials that were pro-Palestinian, and materials that they believe comes from and hails from the Hamas group or terrorist group. And so in doing so, he has been investigated. He was actually arrested, and efforts have been taken or were taken to deport him from the United States. Now, we talked a little bit about this where a federal judge has indicated that, they cannot deport him until he, until they have a hearing on whether or not his First Amendment rights have been violated and things of that nature. But the issue or the problem here is that the person or the department that controls and determines if individuals are allowed to stay in this country who are not citizens, whether or not they have committed a crime or not, is the State Department. And so the Secretary of State, which is Marco Rubio, and looking at the actions of this particular student and other students who have since been detained, and efforts are now being taken to remove them from the United States, he has indicated that if there's anyone who supports Hamas, who is speaking against this country and supporting terrorist organizations, those individuals who are here on student visas or green cards are going to be removed from this country. And even Mahmoud Khalil's attorney said, even if he hasn't broken the law, if it's the intent of the Secretary of State to remove him from the United States, he's getting deported from these United States.
So Greg, we're learning more about the different powers, if you would, of the different cabinets.
Yeah.
That we've never known before.
Right.
So this is an education.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the biggest things is that, there's a lot that's taking place on these college campuses. And we talked a little bit about the 4 universities. I think MIT, Columbia was one, I want to say Harvard was one, where the university presidents came under fire because they had Jewish American students who were basically being harassed on their campus, and they did not want to take any efforts to protect those students or to help those students feel safe. There was one institution, I want to say Harvard, that there was a significant donor who took money from Harvard, from one of these schools, because he felt like they were not being fair to Jewish students. And so there are, schools right now that have students in those schools who are promoting and pushing forward what some believe are terrorist ideology. And so the question is, should those individuals who are in this country on a student visa or on a green card be allowed to remain in this country?
So Greg, one of the things that I've seen, and you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen the talking heads have the discussion about federal dollars that go to these universities being withdrawn, but also another piece that I'm becoming more knowledgeable about is it's just not being able to take away taxpayer funds from universities, but they can also be subject to other violations of whether it's civil rights, discriminatory.
Yeah, that's right. One of the case in point is the Bob Jones University case of 1983, where they were found to have discriminatory acts against African American students, and so they lost funding because of that. In much the same way, I want to say Columbia has now lost $400 million in tax dollars. But the other thing too is that Columbia University may find itself in a situation where they lose their tax exempt status as a private or public university. And so if that happens, the tax benefits of being an educational facility or institution, that tax benefit may go away.
Greg, how many universities you think are being impacted or possibly investigated because of this?
My understanding right now is that there are approximately 60 schools that are being investigated now to determine if they have, students or if they have policies that are adverse to, to American lifestyles and things of that nature that may be adverse to, to America. That they're speaking against America, that they are doing things to promote terrorists or terrorism within these United States.
It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna
Very
be
interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, but just kind of putting a bow on this thing. Schools are the place that young people go to shape their minds. And for a number of years now, people have been very concerned about individuals who go to these Ivy League schools who are coming out what they believe to be indoctrinated to not only support terrorist organizations, but to outwardly speak against these United States. And so people are saying, listen, that's becoming more and more of a problem. I mean, you can't have situations festering inside of our country where someone is planning to tear down these United States.
And if you don't mind, man, I want to stay here for a second.
Yeah.
When we talk about universities being institutions of higher education, and we talk about we welcome and want critical thinking.
Right. Right.
But Greg, I mean, I think, and you can be the farthest left liberal or what they call progressive now.
Yeah.
But Greg, you got to acknowledge that you see a lot of indoctrination taking place in these universities now too.
I mean, listen, right now you have, students at Columbia who are basically saying, this guy's a political prisoner and that they need to release him, in the United States. When clearly the Secretary of State has determined that he is a threat to these United States. You have students on these campuses who are okay with harming other students because of their race or because of their religion, and that should never be okay. When we talk about this country as a melting pot, this country is a melting pot from a number of different perspectives and a number of different views, which includes, our religious views, which includes our political views. And for 4 years, we sat back and we watched that individuals who had differing views from one small group was being vilified. And so that day or those times are starting to reverse and go away. And listen, we talked about this. When people stop being vocal about their feelings against certain topics, for instance, when people stop saying, hey, boys should not participate in girls' sports, because if they said that, they would be vilified, that didn't mean that they agreed with it. That meant that they became a silent majority. And that silent majority are the ones who voted for Donald Trump. And that's what people need to understand. Or if they didn't vote for Donald Trump, who didn't come out to the polls to vote for Joe Biden. And so I used to say, when you condemn the truth, you're rewarded with lies. That's Greg Jackson right there.
That's Greg Jackson?
When you condemn the truth, you're rewarded with lies. And when people were condemning the truth or condemning honest conversations, that we can see, listen, can we come to some point of agreement? But instead, they would just say, you're wrong, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. Now, it's not the lies that they were rewarded with, it was the silence that they were rewarded with, that they didn't know what was coming and what was going to happen.
Greg, it's interesting, and I like the way you framed it up, but here's something, man, that as you were talking, I'm sitting back thinking to myself, when is government going to catch up with technology? And when I say technology, I'm really talking about social media. Because you found that there's a lot of what they call them keyboard warriors out there.
Yeah.
And if those keyboard warriors had to back up what they are putting out there, and if they had to actually defend themselves financially.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know better than myself, there's some cases that folk will make you defend yourself. And I don't know if those are the ones that people are going way over the top. But, Greg, we've seen people go over the top. They've been trying to go over the top with us before.
Yeah.
But, Greg, I totally, strongly believe if people had to pay for their misinformation, you'd start having limited misinformation.
Well, listen, they do have to pay for their misinformation. Who was that? Alex Jones?
Oh.
I mean,
But what was it, how many million, 100 million?
It's almost $1 billion, wasn't it? I mean,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Up there.
You're right.
It was up there.
You're right.
But I mean, listen, and there's a such thing. There's a cause of action known as defamation, slander, false light, depending on which state you're in, to where if someone says something that's not true, they can be held liable and can face some significant fines. But the problem is, to your point, the problem is that when it's on social media, it's harder to get to those people to stop them from doing it because they hide behind the veil of this screen, and they feel that they can say anything and then disappear in a puff of smoke, which is basically the off button on their computer.
The off button. But here's the other hook, and here's something that I love how you did it.
Mm.
And this is, you ultimately made the person who was alleging things, they understood there's consequences for it. But the other thing that you did, man, that was smooth, and that's why when I talk about government catching up with social media, the platform realized if they didn't control that type of language,
right.
that they were gonna be paying out.
Right, right. Which, listen, and that's, that's where this new world of social media has taken us. How do we address, these types of circumstances and situations? And it took a minute to figure it out, but guess what? They figured it out. They figured it out. And listen, I've always said, that the practice of law is a vehicle through which a number of injustices have been recognized and corrected.
Mhm.
And, this was an injustice that was taking place on social media that had to be addressed in the legal arena.
Well, here's what I say, and I refer to, and I don't just give anybody this title, but I refer to individuals like yourself. When we see certain things, Greg Francis,
Mm.
Gladiator,
Yeah.
Attorney Greg Jackson, Gladiator. When I look at how you guys use the law,
Mm-hmm.
man, it's just magnificent to me.
No, listen, we work with what they give us.
It's just magnificent.
We work with what they give us. But I mean, listen, but this is going to be, a very interesting 4-year period that we have here because, this administration is doing things a lot differently. I think that the 4 years that Trump spent away from the White House, from Washington D.C., he learned some things. I mean, he's pushing the system. He's challenging certain things that I think the Supreme Court is going to weigh in. And there's some things that he's doing that people will find that he might be right. For instance, even with the firing of the federal employees, a judge just determined last week that there were tens of thousands of employees, temporary workers,
Mhm.
who had to be rehired. But if he goes through the process of giving them proper notice and things of that nature, he can immediately fire them again. So it's not that he couldn't do it; he just didn't follow the correct procedure or process to do it. And that takes us to another topic, which we kind of got there a little quickly. And Doc was talking about this last week about, hey, listen, if I was president, these are some of the things I would do. I would set audits and I would figure out where the money is going and things like that. I bring it that way because has anyone really and truly watched and seen what Doge is doing?
Hey, now, right now on that topic, and Doc, if you're behind the screen, if you could chime in, because Greg, Doc and I are doing the 6 o'clock show.
Uh-huh.
We started talking about Doge, and guess what happened? The electricity went off on us.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, hey, they had us tapped.
We about to go dark?
Hey,
We about to go dark?
Hey, Doc, on Greg's point, we were in a real deep conversation about that, and the fact that Greg, one, I'm gonna qualify this first and foremost, and I don't take any pleasure of seeing anybody lose their livelihood.
Right.
But in my lifetime, we've seen different administrations, and here's the hook. Doge is nothing new, but this Doge is actually being what I would call, Greg, effective or actionable. There was a Doge, but I don't know that they called it Doge under Bill Clinton administration and under President Obama administration. But Greg, I've never seen in my lifetime that any cuts were made to the federal government.
Yeah.
And now we actually see it.
Well, and we're seeing it, and it's being justified based on the numbers. So, when you go to the Doge website, if anybody wants to, I mean, listen, they are not doing this in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
What they're doing, they put on a website where you can go and look and see exactly what it is that they are addressing, what they're finding, and different things like that. And one of the more shocking things to me is that when you look at the spending of certain agencies in 2019, which was technically the last year that Donald Trump was in office before Joe Biden took over, and 2024, which is basically when Joe Biden left office. If you look at certain departments, so like say the Department of Treasury, in 2019, their spending was $689 billion. All right. Now in 2024, their spending was $1.3 trillion. That was a spending.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's interesting. Here's what's interesting. Do you know what agency falls up under the Department of Treasury? What three agencies fall up under the?
And I really don't know, but I'm taking one. You know, does IRS fall on me?
The I, the R, and the S. Those are the three agencies that fall under the Department of Treasury. And here's a point. Their budget went up almost, what is it? That's almost $700 billion that it went up. Did anyone find that their ability to pay their taxes and handle their taxes was more efficient with $700 billion extra being spent by this agency
I
over
did
that
not
time?
know that.
Listen, I got something even better. And me and
Yeah.
Rob was talking about this. Look at this demographic. This is the credit cards that they cancel. Remember last week they were talking about the fact that they put a dollar limit
Uh-huh.
on all of these, and this is what they found. Now, look at this. The Department of Interior. They had what is that? 20,000 credit cards out. Okay. And that's the regular spending, and this is the travel cards in these departments. And they're going around, all these are issued to government employees that are spending our money
Yep.
willy-nilly. And Elon and Doge put a $1 limit on them, and they got to turn those in. So here's what they've collected, so far. And here's the percentage of that collection. And they've done EPA. It's so much massive waste. It blows your mind.
And Doc,
The average
what was
person.
on the other, Doc, what was on the other side of that screen, on the right-hand side? What was that?
That's the travel card.
Mm-hmm.
That's the travel card right there. And this one is the blue on the left is like the basic everyday card that they might use to purchase stuff. And this one is for travel.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you, and a lot of people know and they don't know. I was in the National Guard and then I went back in and I went into the Navy Reserves. And when I went into the Navy Reserves, they gave me one of these travel cards, like a credit card. And I was so afraid to use it, I never took it out of my wallet. I was like, yeah, I'm not touching this thing. And I literally had a government credit card that they just handed me as a member of a reserve component. I mean, I was intel, but as a member of a reserve component, they gave me this card and said, whenever you travel and you have to go, for your HE or for your weekly or your monthly drills, this is what you use. I think I cut it up, and I didn't touch that thing. I'm not touching this. But I mean, to that point, it's people who take that and they have no restraint.
And yeah, they run.
Doc, check this out. The Department of Veteran Affairs in 2019, their spending was $200 billion. It was $199 billion. In 2024, their spending was $325 billion. Now, I would hope that with nearly $150 billion added, that they would have done better by our veterans, those individuals who have served this country and have given so much to this country. But Doc, I didn't see where our veterans were getting exceptional care or better care than what they were getting when they were only doing the $200 billion.
And that's the sad part about it. They came out a couple of years back where you could go to the community and get care.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to do it. It's ridiculous. You got to meet criteria and all of this stuff. And in a way, I think there needs to be some privatization in the VA, not fully, but it needs to be there because the efficiency, they're not efficient. Case in point, 6 months ago, I canceled a prescription for one of the medications I get. I'm still getting it.
And you canceled 6 months ago.
6 months ago. Went in the portal, cancel it, then called the my doctor, my PA assistant and told her, look, take this off. I don't need this anymore. Some other veteran can benefit from getting these. And that's the kind of stuff that's routinely takes place with the VA.
But the word I think we all are just kind of dancing around is efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg, you called out some big numbers here.
But listen, I'm about to blow your mind with this one now. This is what I'm about to absolutely blow y'all's mind on. All right.
Mhm.
The Small Business Administration in 2019, its spending was $500 million. Small Business Administration. All right, y'all got me right.
Mhm.
All right. In 2024, its spending was $33 billion.
Wait, hold up. 33 billion.
From 500 million to $33 billion. Now, a part of that was the PPP loan.
Okay.
But when I look at these numbers, the thing that immediately comes to me being who I am, is I look around the underserved communities, the black communities, the brown communities, and things like that, and I ask myself, how many more businesses were developed and built when you have 232.5 billion dollars that's added to this administration? I didn't see any significant change to sustainable businesses or helping businesses in underserved communities, and there was more money in terms of percentages that went into the Small Business Administration than any other one of these categories.
Hey, Doc, Greg, you know he's throwing logs on the fire right now because in addition, when you say 500 million to 30, 32, 33 billion, you know what else that came along with that, right? A heavier layer of bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. That's right.
You know, and when you
That's
say what, in particular, come on, man, we narrowing this thing down. And I'm glad you said it, Greg. In particular, when you talk about the black community, how much of that money actually went into the black community? And oftentimes, the black community, just like anybody else that gets knowledge and information, will say, "How do I access that?"
Right.
But that's when the bureaucracy kicks in.
Right. Right.
You know, from a policy standpoint, and believe me, I'll put my hand up. I'm one of the first to say, let's have a level of accountability, a level of stewardship when you're talking about taxpayer dollars. But, man, Greg,
Man, this is a Valdelia onion.
hey, 500, hey, about the onion, 500 million.
From 500 million to $33 billion.
Greg, where did a lot of that money go?
Listen,
I mean,
listen. Greg said something real interesting about the black community not benefiting from this. And one of the things that I always think of is we are never seen as anything other than a commodity. We have been commoditized as a people. Think about social services jobs, prison jobs, and all of those kind of things. Court fees, the clerks, and all of those people who benefit from the targeting of our community in certain ways, and those careers that are dependent on that.
Hey, Doc, you got to put a pause in that because when you talk about being a commodity, if you would, then look at the industry that is either serving you as a commodity. You don't see a lot of major corporations of African American businesses that are providing services. I mean, you know, you look at the prison system. The largest prison system in the world, GEO. You know, and more power to GEO, man. I mean, more power. But I'm going further to say, why don't we see major corporations of African American businesses that are also providing services to African American communities?
Because you know why.
Tell me. Hey, Greg,
All-
got some juicy
all-
stuff over here, man.
Hey, all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
That's a true statement.
Yes.
That is a true
Okay,
statement.
so it's some of that look like us who see us in the same sphere. They see us as exploitable and commodities.
Man.
Because
So-
at
so-
the end of the day,
So here's what's interesting, Doc, because when you talk about the people who benefit from African Americans being commodities, when you said that, it automatically took me to, well, which department handles the prisons, and what are they doing in terms of spending and programs? Because what makes the United States greater than any other country, in theory, is that prisons are supposed to be a place for rehabilitation. All right, and as a part of that rehabilitation, there comes certain things like education and job training and different things of that nature. So you would think that when you have one of the communities that has a larger percentage of individuals that are partaking or are part of that prison system, that you would want to see monies going into that system to help with the rehabilitative aspects of it.
But
so
that's
the department that's over that is the Department of Justice. Okay, the Department of Justice in 2019 spent $35 billion. In comparison to 2024, $44 billion. So just $9 billion increase for the prisons.
look
And
at the.
I would dare say that $9 billion is probably more so for construction than anything else.
In operations.
And we're using taxpayer dollars to construct what? Private prisons.
Private prisons.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
But Doc and Greg, here's where I just go ahead and get a plug in, if you would, is that, man, you look at local government and you look at the impact or lack thereof, we can identify, and Doc and I had this conversation earlier, homeless issues, food deserts.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go on and on, but we have one nucleus that remains at the center of all this, and that is everybody goes to a government entity to find the funding to do things. And here's what I'm convinced about. And I know you don't have to have this to make you, well, you know what, I was going to use the word competent, but here's something that I look for when I'm dealing with my government contracts.
Right.
I look at, do they have any experience in being a practitioner? Ever.
Okay.
I look at that.
Yeah.
And then here's the other thing I look at, and I look at it because I'm a business owner. If you've never been a practitioner, have you ever had to run a business? Because I look at, man, some of the processes. I look at and you know what? I keep using the word bureaucracy, fellas, because when you look at programs FEC operates, what we will show you is here's the money that we take in, but we'll also show you the ROI on it, the return on investment, and the return on investment is basically to keep these children out of the detention center, which costs $100 and it changes year by year, but to keep these kids out based on the money that we're bringing in, we're showing you the cost avoidance of Orange County taxpayers actually having to pay the state their portion of the detention cost center. That to me is what it's all about. But I will say this, and I don't apologize for it.
Yeah.
The level of bureaucracy that I have to deal with on simple matters. It's almost like I could go to Ace Man and get a hammer for $25, but then when I gotta have this conversation over here, that hammer goes from 25 to 125. And again, when we talk bureaucracy, I need to be having more conversation with our elected leadership because somewhere is getting lost.
Well,
in translation.
you know why that cost goes up, right?
Because of that multiplier, but where is that multiplier coming from?
Well,
And
you
believe
got
me-
that. I'm gonna break it down for you.
Okay.
You got the metallurgist who has to determine if the composition of the metal used to make the head is correct. Okay.
What you call a
Then,
metallist?
yeah, and then you have the regulator who has to make sure that it meets the weight specifications based on industry. Then you got the handle maker. Okay, you got the handle maker, and you got the environmentalists that making sure that it's not made from endangered trees.
But it sounds like these are the folk who go further upstream.
And this
and
is-
say,
this-
I gotta
this
make
is-
sure that I'm not.
Yeah.
And this is the middle management. See, and that's the problem. Everybody got to justify their job, so they invent regulations and rules oftentimes that really all it does is gives their job justifications.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Doc. This is going to be very interesting, and don't go anywhere, man. Here's what I want to throw at Greg because we got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Greg, there's a lineup that's out there, man, that that light is starting to glow,
Yeah.
glow,
Yeah, it is.
and just kind of rolling out. Next governor of state of Florida, man. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
You know, listen, man. This is going to be a very interesting conversation over the next year because 2026 is a year that the folks that are going to be doing it are going to have to start getting ready and gearing up to run for governor. And there have already been some names that have either been floated or that have stated without any question that they're going to be running for governor of the great state of Florida. So one of the first individuals that comes to mind is Byron Donalds. He is a congressman.
Hold
here in
up,
the state
hold
of
up.
Florida.
How he eased into that? Doc, why is that? Hey, Greg, why is that one of the first folks to come?
Listen, because he's the first one that has already gotten a major endorsement, from the president of the United States, similar to Ron DeSantis when he was running against Adam Putnam. And I think that made a difference. And so Donald Trump, before Byron Donalds even announced, basically said he would make a great governor, which is an endorsement of Byron Donald. Now, here's the issue and the problem with that, Dr. Black. An endorsement from Donald Trump to a black man, what do you think that's going to do for him in the black community in terms of garnering votes?
You know, you know what that's gonna do.
Hey, but Greg, I don't want to leave that point too quickly because when you look at the African American male turnout for the presidential election, in particular for President Donald Trump, that number was higher than it has ever been.
But now remember, we talking about something totally different.
Well, you're talking about from a holistic perspective, but then here's the other side of what I would say to you, Greg. Man, you're going to get us into a whole nother doggone topic. Let me not even start it with only a few minutes left. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So what is that going to do when you look at the voting turnout of the black community?
I remember the African American male votes. I say we like I didn't vote for Oprah Winfrey. That's why I voted for, just in case y'all didn't know. But the African American voters, they were voting against Joe Biden. I mean, similar to the voters who were Republicans who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, they were not voting for Joe Biden per se. They were voting against Donald Trump. That is not going to be the case for the governorship here in the state of Florida because it's going to be a fresh slate, and who are they going to be voting against? There's no one that has made them mad on the Democratic side at this point to where they say we're voting against this person because they haven't done X, Y, Z.
Oh man, like I said, Greg, you starting another whole conversation because when you say there's no one on the Democratic side right now, Democrats are mad as hell at themselves.
Yeah, but but what happens when Democrats get mad at each other? They still rally around and they still go for whoever the best Democrat is.
Greg, let me ask you this, and I know I want you to get through that list, but have you ever seen anything like this? The minority speaker of the House, Keem Jeffries.
Mm-hmm.
He was asked a question point blank regarding Schumer.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg, I've never seen anything like that before. Do you still have confidence in the Senate Minority Leader?
Right.
Right. Next question.
Right. I mean, but listen, again, that's national politics. When we get on the ground level here in the state of Florida, I mean, by all common sense, the state of Florida should be a Democratic state, but we're not. Because politics does not necessarily follow, and in Orange County in particular. Orange County, you would think, would be a Republican county, but it's not.
But how do you figure, I mean, Greg, you just throwing all these curveballs at the last minute. How do you figure the state of Florida when Republican registration 2 years ago, for the first time, by the way, surpassed Democratic registrations, and then, 8 months ago, just recently, it's running laps around it by a couple of 100,000.
Listen, don't do what the Democrats did in this last election and get comfortable with that. No, I'll tell you what, do get comfortable with that. I want Republicans to get comfortable with that. Yeah, think about it just that way. That's exactly how I want you to think about it, because I'm telling you, if you think the Democrats are going to sit back and let what happened in 2024 happen again, that is not going to happen again. Guaranteed.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a Tea Party movement within the Democratic Party, and it's coming.
Yeah.
Because Schumer
Yeah.
and Maxine,
Who, Maxine
Waters?
yeah. Listen, I had to turn the TV this weekend. She's she's mirroring Biden.
Yeah. I mean, in age
I-
and in cognition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's apparent. She is well past done.
Hey, but you know what? And we could get into this conversation. Greg, I want you to go ahead because we got turned around a little bit. So, Byron Donald, that's
Byron
what-
Donalds, yeah. So Byron Donalds, and but listen, that's a fair question. What does that mean to the African American community for him to have that endorsement? And he really and truly, he cannot rest on the laurels of thinking that's going to carry him in this race. He is going to have to build coalitions with Democratic voters who are common sense Democrats. He's going to have to do that because otherwise, he's not going to make it because they're going to shy with him and they're going to go to probably one of these others. Casey DeSantis, the wife of the current governor, her name has been floated by none other than the governor of the state of Florida, who said that his wife would make a fantastic governor, and has also intimated that she would continue to carry along and get things done that he wasn't able to get done. But the problem with that, though, Doc, what do people here in the state of Florida think about dynasties?
They don't like them at all.
So I think, I think that Casey DeSantis, I think that if she really and truly wants to run, she cannot run back to back to back and make this a back to back to back DeSantis, governorship. She's gonna have to sit back and she's gonna have to wait because that is not something that I think is gonna fly. The next person, Matt Gaetz. That is not gonna fly either because of his issues, the ethical issues that have taken place. But not only that, guess what he didn't get?
He didn't get the endorsement from Trump.
As hard as he worked for Trump. Remember, Matt Gaetz was the one while Trump was out of office that was still trumpeting Trump's message and everything else, and he did not get Trump's endorsement.
Okay, Wilton Simpson.
Wilson Simpson, he is the current agriculture commissioner for the state of Florida. He can raise money like not like other people, but he is a money raiser, and money is what is the lifeblood of campaign.
Right, and if I'm not incorrect, I believe he is a egg farmer.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, yeah.
Yeah. Ashley Moody.
So Ashley Moody, right now, she's sitting in Washington D.C. She was appointed as the senator to replace Marco Rubio. Everyone knows Doc, AG stands for almost governor. So more times than not, when someone is an AG here in the state of Florida, they're getting ready to run for governor. You understand what I'm saying?
If any woman has a chance, it's Ashley Moody.
Okay,
Name recognition.
But does she want to leave D.C.?
That's gonna be a good question.
Yeah.
Chevin Jones.
Chevin Jones. Now that's the first Democrat that we have on the list, Doc. He is a state senator here in the state of Florida, but he's also the first openly gay black male senator.
Nope.
Okay, Frentress, Representative House Minority Leader Frentress Driscoll.
And you know why I said that
Hey,
nope
Doc,
so
we running- we-
definitive.
I
Hey, you
I
own the station, bro. You own the station, bro.
We still gotta have some discipline.
You own the station.
Jason Pizzo.
Jason Pizzo, same thing. He is the Senate minority leader. That's all that we know about. He's going to have to do some work. I think that there's an outlier out there. I think that there's going to be a name that pops up that's going to shock some people on the Democrat side.
We don't have time to go into it, but there's a name that's been popping up, and that is Attorney John Morgan.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. But Greg, I want you to wrap us up with why is Elon Musk now public enemy number one?
Oh, we talking about the Doge. The Doge. His company has taken a nosedive since he has been a part of Doge. And people, for whatever reason, listen, what we've shown you is that he's pointing out the fraud, well, not fraud, but he's finding the spending abuses in our government, and instead of people cheering it, they're trying to tear his company down.
You're absolutely correct. Well, tell you what, hey, everybody, stay tuned. Let's Talk Nation, man.
Hey,
We just stay
one
in
more
there.
thing.
What's
We have to say welcome home to the astronauts on tomorrow. Sonny Williams as well as Butch Wilmer. They went up to space for an 8-day trip. They were up there for 9 months. They're going to be coming home tomorrow. Thanks to
I want to see that
Elon
overtime
Musk.
check.
Thanks to Elon Musk. You're absolutely right. Hey, for those of you who tuned in, we appreciate you with the utmost respect. And boy, we get to the juicy part when we're out of time. Hey, my brother. Hey, Doc, we appreciate you. Greg Jackson, you don't have to go home.
You got to get out of here.
Until next week, we'll see you on Let's Talk Nation. Y'all stay good.